All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 7th, 2022 regular meeting of the Council of the Village of Yellow Springs. And we've already gotten this meeting started. We just came out of an executive session. So we're going to run right into announcements. And I'm actually going to start off with a few, and then if others have them. So I want to begin with, as we get a picture on the screen, just kind of highlighting that I've got my Bulldog blue, got my button on, got my Bulldog mug, because I want to give a big shout out to two of our speech and debate students who qualified for national or for states. They'll qualify for nationals too this past Saturday, and that is Jenny Meekin and Delia Hallett. And so if you see them around town, make sure to give them a big shout out, because they're going to be competing with hundreds of kids across the state, and I think it's really exciting. Also, I wanted to thank Bike Yellow Springs, which is our local chapter of Bike Miami Valley. They recently paid to have our Fix-It station at the train station back into working order. And that's a great asset that we have in town for pumping up your tires and being able to set up your bike if you have something that you need to repair. I also wanted to mention that one of our great team members, Johnny Burns, had his birthday this past Saturday, and that came after a lot of snow activity, plowing and whatnot. So I do want to thank the entire village crew for all the work that they did during all of that snow activity. And one other thing I wanted to mention is that our next meeting, because it will be President's Day on February 21st, will happen on February 22nd. And so just keep that in mind, mark your calendars. I know that our council meetings have become really popular. And the last thing I want to mention is, and I think we have something on the screen for this as well, one of our local citizens who has done a lot of work to support the village, Cindy Sieck, was awarded one of the top 100 public service volunteers. They had over 700 applicants. They came from 49 states. And if you don't know Cindy Sieck, she helped with our Culture of Health initiative. She recently put in a lot of work volunteering to submit our Rebuilding America's Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. And she's just all around, like always, there to support constructively all the great things that we're doing in our community. So thank you, Cindy. We appreciate you. And I don't know if Josue or any other council members have any other announcements.
Brian, I would like to add to your statement about the preparation for the snow. I want to thank my team for having such a great contingency plan in place. You know, when we have a public works team that's responsible for snow plowing, power outages, down branches, water mains, it's one crew responsible for all of those things. And we had a big snow event coming through, and we were prepared to address any one of those emergencies. And it's all done with one crew. So we've got an amazing team. We're able to work around the clock from Wednesday night into Saturday morning to take care of any issues that came up. And the team did such a great job. I couldn't ask for a better team. So thank you. Thank you all for what you do.
All right. Any other announcements? Okay. If not, then we are going to move into the consent agenda. And those are the minutes from our last meeting, as well as the minutes from the work session that we had. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. And I heard a second. Okay. And Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes. Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is a review of the agenda. Anything that we need to change, add, or delete? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to hand it over to Vice President Kevin Stokes to run through our petitions and communications.
Thank you, Brian. And what the clerk has received this week for petition communications in the packet. First of all, we do have the letter and the certificate from the small town regarding the small town volunteer award for Cindy Sieck. Nick Boutis has provided a letter regarding the Glen, Helen Tecumseh Land Trust Grant Award for site cleanup. Alexandra Scott has a letter requesting time on the agenda for Section 8 education. She's representing the Inclusive Resilient Yellow Springs Coalition. The mayor's clerk has the mayor's court report. There's 2 instances of that. Dino Pallotta has a letter offering us information regarding housing finance information links. Dino also issued a letter challenging the PUD process. Max Crome has a letter with links to a presentation by Max Crome. Greene County Community Health Department has information regarding a vaccine clinic that'll be February 8th at Antioch College. And we have a group of letters, some in support and some in opposition to the PUD. And I'll read those off. First, the letters that came in support of the PUD for the Oberer PUD: Connie, Collette, Kathy Adams, and Carolyn Ray. Those folks and entities that issued letters in opposition to the PUD are Sarah Mabra, Emily Foubert, Brittany Baum, Catherine Price, Felicia Chappelle, Johanna Schultz-Herman, the Resident Activism Yellow Springs trustees, Max Crome, Laura Curlis, and Shirley Christensen. And that is all we have for petitions and communications. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, so we're going to move into our legislation. And first up, we have the second reading of Ordinance 2022-02. And Judy, we can read that in by title only.
Right, this is rezoning 52.65 acres of property located north of East Hyde Road and west of Spillan Road to planned unit development residential, PUD-R, and amending the zoning map, thereby approving the preliminary development plan.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
And there's a second. Okay, all right, so before we open the public hearing, I would just like to ask council members, knowing that we've had over 20 hours of discussion on the PUD, and I believe most of us have been eating, breathing, sleeping the PUD for the last couple months. What is it that council members need to make their decision? And so feel free to mic on and just kind of let me know how you want to run things like the citizen comments and so forth, so that we get what we need.
Well, Brian, first of all, if you'll allow me.
Oh, yes, Kevin, please.
Yes, this is Kevin Stokes. Due to potential conflicts of interest, I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing and from discussion and from any vote on this legislation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. All right, and I know that Josue will be removing your privileges and your cameraing off. So, Mary Ann McQueen, anything in particular that you're looking for in this discussion or with our citizen comments?
I do have some points that I would like to make, and I have written out a bullet point presentation to go over that. I can do that now, or I could do that after citizens' comments, and whatever the pleasure of council is.
Okay, well, I think that is up to you. Sorry, well, maybe we'll come back in a minute. Lisa Krieger, anything that you're looking for to help make your decision?
Yeah, I am in particular thinking a lot about the financial scrutiny of the cost benefit analysis, as well as the element about the complementary mix of housing types. Those are the things that are on my mind tonight as I approach this vote.
Okay. Carmen, how about you?
I'm ready to go. I'm good.
Good. Okay, and I think the main thing I'll emphasize is we've heard a lot of comments. I think we would be looking for any new information because I think mostly what we've heard has been sort of repeating the same issues, which we have certainly listened to, and we've read all the letters and certainly talked to a lot of people. The other thing is we are going to be limiting comments to 2 minutes, and we'll need to make sure that people are really clear about giving their name and their affiliation as we requested last time, and that is your affiliation to the village. With our group that's having the watch party, I'm not exactly sure what's the best way to work that because we'll need to be bouncing around with comments. It seems like you're texting Judy, so maybe Judy can kind of help facilitate with letting me know who wants to speak. And otherwise, just remember that we will not tolerate any personal attacks. If those occur, then we will have to mute you. And I think that's about it. Judy, any other protocol that I'm missing?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. So Marianne, back to you. Do you want to make your comments now or wait till after the citizen comments?
I can talk now.
Okay, go ahead.
So there are four points that I would like to make. First is I'd like to just go over what the two options are before us. The second, I'd like to register my concern about some of the tactics that are being used to oppose the development. I'd also like to briefly speak to the ecology of the site itself. And lastly, just what I see as the opportunity. So, we're in this little village, but we're in this country where, I don't know, 30 or 40% of the people, I guess, think that President Trump won the election. I'm not sure what that proportion is, which seems odd. But I have to say that it also seems odd that in this village, I believe there's approximately the same percentage of people who don't understand that there are two options for this development, either a PUD or a single family subdivision. And I think we've tried to put that information out. I understand that it can be confusing. It involves property rights, subdivision rights, zoning code, building codes, and the role of the comprehensive land use plan. So I'd like to first just discuss very briefly the piece of negotiating for the PUD, which took over a year and involved our staff. So if you're negotiating, that means you have to have something to put on the table. You have to have something you want. You have to have something that you can give. In this case, the village did not have a lot of playroom here because Oberer already had what they wanted. They wanted to do a single family subdivision. So I think it speaks well of Oberer that they were willing to spend over a year to work with primarily our staff. And I particularly think it speaks well of our staff who were willing and able to negotiate the deal that they did. So I'm talking particularly about Josue Salmeron, our village manager, Johnny Burns, our public work director, and Denise Swinger, our planning and zoning person. Judy Kintner has been involved, and our attorney, Brianne Parcels, has as well. But these people have put their heart and soul for the last year into this negotiation. And we have been getting a lot of emails of people who mistakenly don't understand that the village just did not have anything to offer, really, other than the goodwill of Oberer or their interest in being a good neighbor. And frankly, I cannot think of anyone in the village who could have done a better job than our staff. And I'm going to be sarcastic here, but if you think you could have done a better job, then I suggest you put your name in for one of those positions, because if I were one of our staff at this point, I might be thinking about working someplace else for more money at a place that appreciated the work that I did. So set that emotionality aside. My sense is that there have been 3 groups of people who've been opposing the PUD. The biggest group, I think, are people that don't understand that, just what I've said, that there are 2 options. There's a second group, and it's a small group, I think, who do understand. They understand that the option is a single family subdivision, and they prefer that. That's cool. I don't, that's not what I think, but I can see some rationale in that decision. Then there's another group, and I don't know how big it is, who do understand that there are 2 options. And their strategy is to convince people to oppose the PUD and then work to put roadblocks in the way so that Oberer cannot do the single family subdivision. And an email that I had from someone in this group sort of says, I think, sort of what the strategy is. Slow down the developer, make it more difficult, more expensive and time consuming, increasing the chances that they will sell to a party that actually has love for the village. Well, a party who actually has love for the village already had a chance to buy the property, and that party didn't. But well, whoever that party is or may be, I didn't. Judith Hempfling, who with her, she and I sort of led the community effort to save the Whitehall Farm. We didn't do it. The village government didn't. Home Inc. didn't. The chamber didn't. The foundation didn't. The Community Development Corporation. None of us who live in the village who knew that that property was for sale or was available at any rate, sitting there for decades, none of us bothered to go around and try and buy it. But Oberer did. So I have a problem with the idea that of trying to put roadblocks and hamper and hassle this process in order to push Oberer out so that someone else can buy the property. We had our chance. It's our bad. We didn't do it. And I have to say that at least Max Crome, who is leading one of these efforts, and I assume Dave Chappelle is involved in this as well. Max has said publicly that he's looking out for his business interests and Dave's business interests. I have asked what is it in their business interests that this development is going to hurt? And in the interest of transparency, I would like to know. But right now we've received, one of our council members has received a legal threat from Max, and now we're being asked on a fishing expedition, which is what it's called, to send all of our emails from August 1st to Max's attorney. I just see that as part of this harassment in terms of what I think about. So the property itself, there have been people that have talked about the property, it's green, you know, it has a stream in it, et cetera. Well, not everything that's green is a pristine natural property. Three-fifths of that property has been farmed with industrial agriculture. Industrial agriculture is contributing to 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions. It also uses fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides that flow into that creek and that flow into the Little Miami River. So this is not like some nature preserve that we're putting housing on. The creek itself has been channelized as sort of a creek, sort of a drainage ditch, has much honeysuckle around it, scrub trees. It's not exactly a pristine site. I will say it has a mother of all oak trees on that site, which I will ensure gets preserved, and I will be the first person up there if there's any danger for that tree. So in closing, we didn't do what we could have done. Everyone in this community acquire that property. We didn't do it. So I want to encourage people, rather than trying to stop this project, let's do what we can do to make this a great neighborhood. For example, this could be the first neighborhood in Yellow Springs that has all natural plants. That's a natural habitat neighborhood. That would be a first, not just in Yellow Springs, but probably in all of Ohio. So I will end with that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. All right, so we're going to shift to citizen comments. And again, using the raise your hand symbol would be the best way for me to be able to recognize who wants to speak. And I saw Matthew Kirk's hand go up before we even started. So Matthew, I'll begin with you.
Hey, how's it going, Brian?
Good.
All right, I will do my best to keep it to 2 minutes. There's kind of a lot to unpack still. I guess the biggest thing, and I want to say, I was part of the community group that worked with Josue on this project, and I was really excited when we first started talking about it. And the idea of these duplexes was brought in instead of single-family homes, because in my mind, that meant rental opportunities. However, once the plan actually was presented, my view soured, because what I saw before me were not duplexes, but were a product that's actually called a twin home. And the way this is being set up is these are really functioning as condominiums. The grass is going to be mowed by the HOA, the snow removal is going to be done by the HOA. And so just by virtue of including those, that property is going to have an HOA in perpetuity. At no point, will it be able to kind of fall into the natural fabric of Yellow Springs and have it, property owners be able to have their own definition of what they want to do there. And when you really look at the brass tacks of the project, it's roughly the same number of homes, roughly the same amount of revenue from a tax perspective. One thing that we're doing, though, is we're taking a significant portion of the property and allocating it to more of a niche classification, whereas single-family homes, 8 out of 10 new home buyers, that's what they prefer, no matter the age range. So really, that is going to be a more diverse product that I think is going to integrate into the community better in the long term, whereas what we're really getting is a single-family home development and a condominium development right next to each other, essentially. And so I think it's important to kind of understand the framing and also understand how those products attract different home buyers and what it is we're trying to attract as we're a community that's trying to get younger. Sorry.
All right, that's 2 minutes. That's 2 minutes.
All right.
Matt, you're muted. I promise I didn't do it.
Brian, I hear you. I see you moving your lips. Are you trying to speak?
Oh, shoot, sorry. Yeah. I was saying John Fee next. So yes, John Fee, go ahead.
Okay, I had 3 points of why not to why to reject the PUD. But I'm gonna start out with my solution, which I see Max is already on to. And it is, to prevent this from happening in the future on other issues as well, we should have a review of how this plan developed and rolled out with little or no community input, because that's why we're at where we're at right now. In other words, transparency of a process. So that's my solution oriented to keep things like this happen, because this has happened on other issues. Selection of the police chief selection committee, review of the citizen review board, and other things that have been surreptitiously behind doors and then presented to community. So transparency of process. Reasons this should be rejected because it's the socioeconomic overlay is flat out disgusting. Just because it's small scale is still the type of social engineering of 70, 60 years ago, where low-income people were coerced or herded into a certain part of the city, into tenements and projects. Secondly, it's overly obvious that YSDC has been stroking Oberer for months or years for personal reasons of building a personal legacy, never minding what the community wants or needs. It should be rejected for that alone. And finally, it's the sole purpose of council to do the people's bidding. And the people have spoken against this seemingly, well, it's not seemingly, it's a surreptitious unilateral wet dream of council and YSDC. So I demand rejection of approving the PUD. And if I could end with a 2-sentence quote, Judy, it'd be quick. The first man who, having fenced in a piece of land, said, "This is mine," and found people naive enough to believe him, that man was the true founder of civil society. From how many crimes, wars, murders, from how many horrors and misfortunes might not anyone have saved mankind by pulling up those stakes and filling in that ditch and crying to fellow humans, beware of listening to this imposter. You are undone if you once forget that the fruits of the earth belong to us all equally, and the earth itself to no one. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Thank you.
Jumpy.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. I do want to speak to transparency. Matthew Kirk did highlight that we had a citizen group, and I think most people that are familiar with development projects know that some negotiations do not happen in public, but we've had a lot of public process. All right, I saw Lisa Abel next.
All right. I just had a question, maybe Brian, you can address this, which is how did YSDC get thrown under the bus with this project? We're not at all related to it. Anyway.
Yeah, have no idea.
I wanted to take just a minute to explain what I know about groundwater in the area of this development. In 2001, I worked for YSI, and I was the project manager of the groundwater contamination project at YSI. And I learned some things about groundwater contamination and about soil contamination. The first thing I learned is that soil doesn't move, especially when it's underneath the surface. And so what happens is if soil gets contaminated, what happens to the contamination is it moves via water. So rain flows through the soil, water flows down until it hits something, and then it starts to move in the direction of groundwater. So that's how it happens everywhere. In this particular part of the village, that layer of rock that the groundwater hits is generally 10 to 20 feet below the surface. And then below that is a limestone aquifer that's somewhere around 40 to maybe 50 feet, 30 to 50 feet down. Most folks in the region who are on groundwater get their groundwater, their drinking water through a well that they drill that's in that first limestone aquifer. So when YSI had this contamination project, we drilled, I don't know, dozens of wells at various levels, that shallow, intermediate, and deep, to hit all the aquifers to try to figure out where the groundwater contamination was. The sources were at YSI. And residential wells that were in this region were also used as part of trying to delineate where these plumes were. So I guess what my point is, if there was a dump that contained anything that would have impacted groundwater in terms of contaminants that are drinking water standard issues for EPA, those contaminants would have been found during the 20 years that YSI was monitoring wells, and they were not. And if there had been, say, the same chemicals, but in a different quantity at that site, the Oberer site, there would have been a spike in the downstream wells that would have indicated, hey, there's something else going on that's not at YSI, it's between YSI and this well. And those spikes were also not found in the groundwater wells. So anyway, those are the couple of things I just wanted to let you all know about, a little bit of history from 20 some years ago.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. I saw Johnny Dredd next. All right.
Can you hear me? I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Anybody?
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry to make this quick. Mr. Housh, I want to say last weekend, I think it was our last village meeting, it was 3 minutes and now it's 2 minutes. I prepared a 3-minute thing. So if you just give me a second, I promise no personal attacks. Just, I'm not anywhere else but my own house. I want to start now. I want to start by saying, I got to make this quick. Oh, this sucks. I'm a resident. I'm a single father. I'm a renter here for nearly 15 years. Just this year, I was able to afford to buy a house in the village. Yay. When I moved to town, I did so because it was a diverse, it was a multifarious, and it was a liberal community. And it was the only place that I felt safe being a Black single father raising biracial kids. My kids started at Mills Lawn and they're in the high school now. And when I moved here, I was welcomed by an artistic, a musical, and an intellectual community. They've helped raise my kids, and it's the same community that at times helped me pay my village utility bills. And the community that I knew then has slowly been priced out. I was shocked when I heard of this like tiki-talaki development being presented on the outskirts of town. And to be honest, I was a little embarrassed. I felt like you guys went behind our backs. You developed it for a year and I didn't have any input. And it's kind of too late. I'm sorry, but it's a little too late to recommend that we do a better job, or that you guys were surmising you could have done a better job, because you did it without our input. And that's offensive to me. I feel upset about that. So the other thing is I've been watching the conversation develop into one that's like divisive, and it's overbearingly been lost in the minutia of this like faux immediacy or codes or environmental impact. And I feel like this isn't an instance of us looking a gift horse in the mouth, but it's more like checking the inside of like a Trojan horse before it comes into our city, you know? Really quick, the elephant in the room, it seems is that nobody wants to discuss the opinion or the influence of Mr. Chappelle. And I'll be honest, I'm not a friend of his. I've never been to his house. I don't have his phone number, okay? But I do recall him mentioning that if we were to move forward with this project, that he would pull out of his holdings in the village. And I've got to ask, like, I've been to juke joints, I've been to summer camps. We as a village have closed off the streets for his concerts. His cultural infusion into this town has been longstanding. We've been international guests grace our village. I've seen him raise and champion our villagers. And it's not because he needs to. It's not because he economically needs to do this stuff. Yeah, and it's not something, the issues that we've had can be just fixed by hanging a Black Lives Matters flag over 68. And I'd be foolish to say if it wasn't Dave's influence, Mr. Chappelle's influence doesn't bring some villagers or outside of towners to town. And from the outside, like I said, he doesn't need us, right? He's here because he loves it. But now why is Oberer here? No, it's not been. It's only been two. Let me just speak for a little more.
All right, John, you do have to move on, but thank you. I think you made. All
right, I'll raise my hand if I can come back maybe later at the end. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Right. I respectfully appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Okay, I saw the Mills Park Ballroom next, and I guess let's just be clear on who's speaking. So go ahead and mic on. All right. Okay. Are you guys micing on?
Oh, I got it.
Okay. We can hear you now, Max.
You can hear us?
Can.
Okay, thank you. Please don't count that against my 2 minutes. First, Marianne, there's way more than 2 options. There's an infinite number of options. Even what's in front of you today, there's at least 4. There's approve, deny, approve with conditions, and table it. That's at least 4. If you deny or table it, that opens up the rest of the world of possibilities. There's not just 2 possibilities. I'm not in any of the groups that you mentioned. I'm in a group of someone who has 30 years of experience in projects just like this, who really knows how to read the code and who has some other ideas. I'm respected all over the country for my ideas about this, but the door has been slammed in my face in Yellow Springs, my own hometown. I don't know why. I got an attorney because Brian Hausch kept implying that I was being dishonest with my underlying intentions, that I was spreading misinformation. I have to protect my very, very valuable reputation. That's why I got an attorney. I don't want to sue anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody in this town. I'm here because I love this town. I want to make this a better place. I've withdrawn any threat of suing Brian, but I ask, stop calling the things that I say misinformation when you're not going to name what that misinformation is. If I'm wrong about something, let me know. We'll straighten it out. Oh, shit. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, Lisa, I want to say I have experience with the YSI bloom too. I grew up between YSI and development, and I drank that tainted water for 18 years, okay? I know all about it. So it's extremely offensive to me when you try to sweep my environmental concerns under the rugs. There was a dump there, guys. Let's just accept that fact. I asked you to call Mr. Strewing and just ask him, but no one's taken the trouble to do that. For decades, our village council has held the line. They've stopped development like this. They've stopped development in this town. Why won't you?
Okay, thanks, Max. All right, I saw Ellis Jacobs next.
Thanks. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Hearing it.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Good. It's always an interesting discussion, and I'm always thrilled to be at meetings with fellow villagers that have strong opinions and express them so well. Affordable housing is a critical need in our community, and I really wish this proposal in the PUD had more of it. But I know that council has strongly supported initiatives for affordable housing in this town for the last several years and really for quite a while. And so I believe that our staff people who negotiated with Oberer knew that and made their best effort to try to come out of this negotiation with Oberer with some affordable housing. And they did get some things that I think would be valuable. They are, in fact, valuable for our community. I think Marianne said it correctly, that they went into the negotiations. We went into these negotiations with way less leverage than I wish we had, than we should have had. And in fact, we got to fix it. We got to figure out why we had so little leverage, and we got to fix that into the future. But I'm concerned, and I've listened carefully to the people that are opposing this PUD. I'm concerned that I'm not hearing a viable strategy to get a better result. What I'm hearing is a strategy that will probably most likely end up with us getting a large development of single family only residents that cost a lot of money. And so in the absence of something better, I think we need to look seriously at what's on offer. And we need to tell ourselves that we're going to fix the problem that resulted in us having so little leverage. So with apologies to our avian friends, I'll say sometimes a bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush.
Okay, thank you, Ellis. All right, John Hempfling.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, what I wanted to say was, I think, very similar to what Ella said, that basically, clearly under the PUD, the village will at least get some land donated to the village to develop affordable housing on. And sorry. I guess, listening to what council has said so far, I've definitely heard support for affordable housing occurring on at that land. So I think that explains some of the support on council for the PUD application. And also I've heard some concerns about gentrification occurring due to the development. And between the PUD and the parallel plan, it seems obvious that the parallel plan would result arguably in proportionally more gentrification since it wouldn't contain no affordable housing. I haven't heard council express any sort of desire for single family housing over duplexes and townhouses or over a park or over the affordable housing. And so I guess that's a good reason to feel like council and maybe most of the community actually prefers the PUD over the parallel plan. And if council sort of disagrees with their own lawyers, it basically legal view that if the PUD is rejected, then the parallel plan will move forward. I guess I just urge those council members to move to table to get other legal advice if they doubt their own lawyer's view. Although I suppose that would only just be like a necessary but not sufficient condition. Sorry, I should have prepared more for opposing the PUD, because arguably, even with more time and slightly more leverage, it's still a little bit questionable whether the village really could get a better plan. Sorry. John. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Amy Walmsley. Okay, Amy, I think you're on.
Okay, sorry, I'm struggling apparently. Okay, here we go. Good evening, my name is Amy Walmsley and I'm speaking as a concerned community member and not as a member of the Arts and Culture Commission or any other organization in which I am affiliated. I want to thank all of you for your service to our village, a village that prides itself on activism, fighting for the truth, transparency, equity, and diversity. Unfortunately, with all due respect, I am finding that the process and communication around the PUD has not been representative of our village. The FAQ came out almost a month after a council member requested it, and uses the voice of Oberer, and some of the questions are not completed. For example, question number 9 specifically states, side-loaded garages are a popular feature in many of our subdivisions. And question number 4 was not fully answered. The answer only refers to the PUD zoning and not the RA zoning as requested. From a citizen's perspective, how can council make an unbiased, educated decision when the requested FAQ by council does not give the entire picture of the questions that are not fully answered? How can villagers have confidence in a document that lacks detail and clearly appears one-sided to the PUD in the voice of Oberer? Question 30's response, under cluster development in the remaining area or open space needs to be large enough to have an economic use or be accepted as part of the park or other maintained or preserved open space. If this site were clustered onto a small site, the resulting open space would not be large enough for that use. A clear-cut 9 acres of trees was approved. 9 acres is not only enough to be a park, it is what the comprehensive plan actually requires with the PUD of this size. When looking at the comp plan, it mentions moving senior housing closer to the downtown area for walkability and accessibility. Now we are being sold housing as potential retiree housing so far out of town, it will be on property that we annexed. I'm generally concerned that there is a consideration to put the work that defines the village of Yellow Springs to the side for what seems to be mostly 1.75 acres and some playground equipment. Playground equipment that is being placed next to a drowning hazard for children, which, by the way, approving with modifications could not change where that playground equipment is placed. The village celebrates those who are governmental agencies accountable. Therefore, I am asking that council either request a postponement until you receive the information that you need or requested or vote no against the PUD proposal. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Amy. E. Fleck.
Hello, my name is Eve Fleck. I live on the corner of Randall Road and Margaret Drive. I've lived here since 1987, and I've been active in the village in lots of ways. The affordable housing will be directly behind my house and the side of my house. And I just want to say that I'm in favor of that. I look over the plan. I don't really want to see all giant single-family homes. And I've also heard from some retirees that they would like to have some sort of condominium option, which is why Park Meadows is often very popular, that they don't want to be shoveling snow or living in a 4-bedroom house. But anyway, I wish the PUD was different. I wish it were better. I wish it were more to my liking, but this is what we have. And in that sense, I'm in favor of it. I want to see some affordable housing. That's all.
Thank you, Eve. Diane Chittister.
Hi, good to see everybody. I'm a 40-year resident of Yellow Springs, and as in my previous job at the Yellow Springs News, I covered a whole bunch of village council meetings and covered things like the Bowen housing needs study. And I'm for the PUD. I hope council approves of it. My work covering council convinced me that the village definitely needs more housing of diverse kinds, diverse prices, diverse sizes, and critically needs affordable housing. And the PUD takes us down the road toward meeting these needs. It provides some of this, far more than Residence A, which only provides one kind of housing, big houses, big lots. And my understanding is that's the only other option other than the PUD. So definitely I'm supporting the PUD. A lot of the opposition toward the project comes from neighbors, and that's understandable. Neighbors have legitimate interest, but those interests are not the same as the interest of the community as a whole. And it seems to me that the PUD does meet the needs, the interest of the community as a whole. So I urge council to vote for it. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Diane. Kate Hamilton.
Hi, thanks. Resident, grew up here, moved away, came back to raise our children here. When we were looking for a home about 9 years ago, we were unable to find one. So we ended up building in Birch 3, which I never planned on building a house. This used to be a field, but it was all that was available basically at that point. I remember asking my developer, why don't you build some duplexes in the middle part? There was this like island that my kids called Poop Island because people walked their dogs there and didn't clean up after it. Anyways, he said, oh, well, we wanted to do that and we tried to do that, but the neighbors were opposed to it. And so I recently read a news article back in 2008. This happened before I had moved here. And sure enough, yeah, neighbors didn't want it. They didn't want that look. They didn't want their property values to go down. I do think that some of the neighbors speaking out against this subdivision are worried about their property values, and they need to be honest about that. I support the PUD. I think we need a diversity of types of housing, and being a person that lives around a bunch of big houses, this doesn't represent what most of our community looks like. Yeah, I support it. And I'd rather it stay a field with deer frolicking and all of that, and I'd like to be 35 years old again. But this is our reality. And our staff and our village manager have worked extremely hard to make the best out of this situation. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Kate. Jamie Fine.
Oh my God. Hi, all. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'm visiting briefly from California. My name is Jamie Fine. I'm the son of Joan Fine, who lives on East Limestone Street, where I grew up. I wanted to let you know that I spent time playing in that land with Max. And I do recall that that was a garbage dump. We used to collect garbage and make flotation devices. And Max used to try to convince me to get on those flotation devices in that pond. I think what I'm hearing and seeing is that there's a real need to slow down and allow for more investigation, further deliberation, and more of this civic discourse that Yellow Springs is known for. I do recognize there's a need for additional site assessment due to the proximity of groundwater contamination, the history of the site being used as a dump, and what I can see is an incomplete evaluation of the environmental attributes and potential for sensitive habitat. I did want you to know that I'm a senior economist at Environmental Defense Fund, where I've worked on environmental policy and advocacy for over 30 years. I took a look at the Oberer proposal, the 366-page proposal, because I was particularly interested in what the fiscal impacts of the proposed project, which adds 10% of population to the community, are going to be and how those are going to be mitigated. And I really didn't find anything. So Council Krieger, I understand that's one of the questions you have. And with a little more time and more investigation, I'd be happy to offer my help in understanding those potential impacts and how we can mitigate them. With more deliberation, we can use what we have as a community, and that's time and leverage. We can see that leverage in the room today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Okay, next I see Eric Oberg.
Thank you.
Okay, Eric, hold on a second. Okay, so watch party guys, you need to figure out a way to mute yourselves, or I guess otherwise leave the meeting and come back. So, okay, so Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't going to make a comment tonight, but I wanted to point out something that I heard that I guess I want to hope that it's not what somebody meant, but I heard a comment from the ballroom that decades of village councils have stopped development, and we hope that this council will stop development too. I kind of want to point out that the fact that we stopped development for decades is why we're in the problem we have with a lack of housing, a lack of diversity, and a lack of availability. So if that's really the stance of a large group of people in this town, that come hell or high water, we want all development stopped, I would love that to just be said honestly. But I heard the statement. I hope it was wrong. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Eric. Judith Hempfling.
Hello there. Can you hear me, Brian? Yeah.
You can, yes.
Okay. Just want to say, I think every council member ran on a platform of affordable housing. I believe, as Marianne said, there are two choices. We can have RA, and I think that will start probably around $400,000 per home, or we can have a PUD where the village council, where the village will be donated almost 2 acres of land, where 20 to 28 units of affordable housing can be built. It will be donated for affordable housing. Council members have ran on a support of affordable housing. The RA will provide no affordable housing. I'm very much with Ellis, Jacobs. I'm very much with people who want more diversity in this community. The affordable housing can be affordable to the people that the village council can work, that the village council wants to serve. You guys get to decide. If you want it for people of very low income, per the federal guidelines on affordable housing, a little higher income, modest income. But a lot of the permanently affordable housing in the village is serving people with low to very modest income. I don't see how RA gets us what I had understood when I voted for several of you guys. I don't think it gets us affordable housing that you had committed to. So I urge you to stick to your commitments, and please do vote for this PUD. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Judith. Patrick Lake. Patrick, are you able to mic on? I don't really see anything. Okay, there we go. All right, Patrick. Okay, but we cannot hear you.
It looks like he's on as an individual and in the ballroom.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Patrick, try to mic on now. Patrick, try to mic on now. Patrick, try to mic on now.
Can you, we're going to have a bunch of feedback. Can you unmute the ballroom so I can speak there, please?
Sure. Whoever can unmute the ballroom.
Thank you. Okay, Brian, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, excellent. Speak right into it. Okay. Council members and my fellow Yellow Springers. Our council seems trigger ready to set a dangerous precedent. Passing this PUD will begin the erosion of cultural diversity and our uniqueness, the exact thing that has drawn and held Yellow Springers to this place, the place we all love. Are we ready to welcome Panera Bread, Walmart, and Cracker Barrel next? Whether for or against this PUD, there is so much that we all agree on here. We want to see YS grow. We want to see increased access to affordable rentals. We want to see preservation of green, natural, and important spaces. And we want to see that anything that is done here meets our quirky needs and values. We hope the council will stand with us and push back against this development. I'm heartened that Sugar Creek Township leaders felt empowered by their community's visioning documents and comprehensive land use plan, and emboldened by the support of their residents to stand up to Oberer and fight for a development that adheres to their values. It's a fight that continues. I urge council to stand up for us. This does not adhere to our values. And if you will not listen to us, I will be fully supporting the referendum to overturn this terrible decision for our community. More retirees and less jobs will not sustain our community past the next decade. As jobs leave, so will young people. Eventually, so will our schools. I don't want to see Yellow Springs die with my parents' generation. I'm sorry that our council lacks the vision to see the significant and damaging effects passing the PUD would have, but I stand ready to overturn their decision with my fellow community members, because I will fight to keep Yellow Springs weird and vibrant, full stop.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Okay, next we've got Matt Raska.
I would like to pass. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay, so I don't see any hands up. All right, so what I am going to, oh, no, I see Dino and then Matthew and
Patricia Brown.
Pat as well. All right, so let's put on Dino and then we'll get to Pat next. Okay, Dino, you should be able to mic on. Okay.
Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Yep.
Members of council, if you're going to attempt to pass this PUD, then for the good of the village and the safety of the village, add the phase 2 study as a modification with respect to the dump in the former YSI plume. Councilperson Krieger, we've all read your email stating that you are fearful that Oberer will pull the PUD if you put a modification on it. Let me be first to say Oberer is a big company and they can make their own decisions. You don't need to make that for them. Oberer does this for a living, and a phase 2 study is nothing new to them. In the same token, we need our council to make decisions in our best interest. However, from your email, you're voting from a position of fear. For almost the entire last 2 years, you have not held in-person council meetings due to COVID. You did for a moment, and then you went back to Zoom. And you've demanded that central business district be masked up. You stated it was for the safety of you and the villagers. However, when it comes to the Oberer project, you're looking the other way by not placing a phase 2 study on the PUD. You're disregarding the safety of the village and its people. The consistency here is your inconsistency. Operating and voting from a position of fear is not good leadership. Rather, let's vote from a position of strength and put our safety first by adding the phase 2 modification. Do the right thing for the safety of our village, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dino. All right, Pat Brown.
Hello?
Hey, we can hear you.
I wanted to say a couple things. One is we desperately need housing in Yellow Springs. There are very, very few lots available. Our school system will be in trouble in a few years if we do not have more housing. If we have more people, students coming from outside than inside, we will be in trouble. We need housing. This plan with the PUD provides both single-family homes, which probably will have children in them, maybe seniors too. It also provides the townhouses where people can buy 2 of them and rent one out if they want. I know a couple people would love to do that. It provides especially more affordable housing, which we need. The PUD is the best plan we get, and I thank the village for working so hard with Oberer to come up with a plan that is going to provide us housing. It's not a perfect plan, but what option do we have, A or PUD? I say do PUD, we need it. It's not going to hurt us. I live in a PUD now. We have very expensive houses. We have home inc houses. We have medium houses. We all get along and we all love each other. You don't have to have us segregated. A community that has all of this stuff is much better than one that has only one little part of it. Vote for the PUD, please.
Okay, thank you, Pat. All right, so I want to take a minute to clarify one thing and just make it super clear. And I appreciate that Lisa Abel brought it up. The Yellow Springs Development Corporation has nothing to do with this project. That being brought up is completely misinformed. And so I want to be really clear that bringing other groups into this is not appropriate. And second thing I'm going to say is that since I was specifically called out, I have never said that anyone is intentionally misinforming, but as an elected official who represents this village, when there is information that is not correct, I need to call that out. And that I think is my role, it's council's role, and I will continue to do that. But that should not be conflated into suggesting that I'm accusing anyone of doing anything purposefully. But we can only make good decisions if we have accurate information. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to give Matthew Kirk 1 more minute. Exactly. I'm going to give Johnny Dredd 1 more minute, and then we'll figure out who else is talking at the watch party. And then we'll start to move towards the decision making. Okay, so Matthew Kirk, you got 1 minute. All right, we got Matthew. We giving him the ability to mic on? There we go. Matthew, go ahead.
All right, Brian,
Matthew,
can you hear me? Yeah. So I want to talk about how going with the RA development would actually affect affordability in the village. The reality is right now there's so much scarcity in the housing market that every house in the $150,000 to $250,000 price range is basically getting scooped up by somebody who's an all-cash buyer, can come in, do significant improvements to the house, either flip it or make it into their forever home, right? By making this all single-family homes, now we're giving a brand new product to those same people that have the funds to come into the village. So hopefully this will free up more of those houses in the $150,000 to $250,000 price range for people who want to buy them. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of houses in Yellow Springs that sell for a lot more than they would in other communities. So if we have more of a modern housing stock, that is going to attract people who want that. Nobody wants to go through like a 6 month to 1 year renovation. That's not like an awesome thing when you're like looking to move somewhere, you know? So I think that we're underselling how much the RA development actually contributes to affordability. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matthew. All right, Connie.
Respectfully, I appreciate you guys for giving me the time. I just want to say that I'm of the opinion that the red pill, the blue pill were offered are both not great options. I do feel like we've got enough intelligence among the council that built this plan, and you guys said it yourself during COVID, you know, behind closed doors without us knowing. I think we have enough intelligence among us and among the villagers that if you guys just listen to what people are saying, there's a lot of opposition, but there's not opposition against the PUD. It's against the way that it's being presented. I think we can do better. We all know that we can do better. There's so much intelligence in this community. We can come up with a better plan or something that's better for all of us. And this is gonna, this decision that you make tonight is gonna last long beyond your council seats. It's gonna last long beyond how long you guys are sitting on council. It's gonna last generationally for my kids. And this is something that if we can champion as a village, if we can all come together and come up with a plan that we can champion as a village, we can all benefit from this, and we can make it the best village for everybody. And it's a place that artists and musicians and single dads can afford. And I don't care if it takes 5 years to make that plan, and if Oberer has to pay property taxes on that plot of land for 5 years. We need a win here. We need a win for everybody. We know it's not perfect right now.
1 minute,
we
Johnny.
also know we can all do better. And that's what we're voting on tonight. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay. Yes.
Brian, I'm assuming that you are aware of it. I'm getting some emails and texts from folks at the ballroom, realizing that they're having some trouble. So you may want to just chunk down that list in one go. I believe those folks do still want to speak.
Yeah, that is the plan. So you're reading my mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and have the Mills Park Ballroom mic on.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, Brian. Kendra Cipollini, 20-year resident of Yellow Springs, ecologist, scientist. Our village ordinance demands that we have a better PUD. One of the requirements of the PUD, and in fact, what Oberer applied for, was that it preserves significant environmental resources. Mary Ann McQueen said herself it doesn't preserve significant resources. There's 9 acres of land they're going to clear. In fact, they're almost going out of their way to destroy what's there. This is mostly agricultural land, yet they're finding 9 acres to cut down. It's like the Onslers coming in to try to take over make the Lorax mad. There's a 300-year-old tree there that is just right in the middle of a housing area. They obviously didn't look at the site very much. There's obviously information about a dump. It's not included in the phase 1 plan. And the phase 1 environmental plan clearly says, we don't have all the information. If we get more information, we have to go back and do this again. And that dump information was not in there. They only asked Oberer and Struing, hey, are there any environmental hazards? And they were like, nope, we don't think so. But now that we know that there are some, we have to go back and do a phase 2. We know there were YSI chemicals in the surface water there. That's in the report. Low levels, but they were still there. So I urge you to go back and come up with a better plan. And in fact, I argue that the village ordinance demands us to do a better plan than what's there, particularly in regards to them needing to meet preservation of significant natural features, which they're really not doing at all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kendra.
Hi, Johanna Schultz-Herman. Building on what Kendra was saying, that you keep saying that there's these 2 options when the PUD as currently presented is in direct violation of what is stated in Yellow Springs Code of Ordinances, Chapter 1254 for planned unit development. Explicit violations of preservation of significant natural features, extensive open space and recreational amenities, connectivity of open space with new or existing adjacent greenway or trail corridors, preservation of small town appeal, improvements to public streets or other public facilities that mitigate traffic and or other development impacts. Rezoning the area to PUD will not result in a significant adverse effect upon nearby or adjacent village lands. And I think the most important part is that the proposed uses and design of the PUD shall be substantially consistent with the village's adopted comprehensive plan and the principles for land stewardship contained in the vision, Yellow Springs and Miami Township. So I implore the village council to build upon the work of whoever worked on this comprehensive land use plan and this vision for the village so that it's not in vain. Do you know how much time you've been spending on the Oberer thing? Think about previous incarnations of village council members who worked night and day for months, years, citizens involved, to get these on paper so we wouldn't be in this situation. And as a taxpaying citizen, I need you to stick to this vision. And that's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else from Mills Park?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just can't really see you guys very clearly. So, because
I can.
You're a small piece on this.
So I'm Kelly Carr. One thing that's consistently struck me is that we seem to be voting yes out of fear. Council seems to be, have a few people that are voting yes out of fear for this PUD, out of fear of what will be lost, which is donated land or a place for children to play, you know, both good things, but thinking that if we make a deal with the proverbial devil that we will win. That's a metaphor. That's not a personal insult. So by accepting the pittance that Oberer is offering us, we are denying ourselves the bounty that our village actually deserves. And a large group has gathered here today. I guess you can't see it, but it's quite a few people. And this group doesn't feel the council is working for us or even listening to us. So I'd like to address some accusations of harassment that were given today. Your citizens are using their protected legal options to attempt to get their council to work with them.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you. There is a growing movement that has passion and has a vision, and you seem to refuse to acknowledge that. No one wants this development. That's the thing. No one actually wants Oberer to develop this land. No one does. You can at least demand a strict PUD with 1,000 modifications to force the developer, let's be clear, just wants the money to work within our village vision. You can insist on actually getting for your citizens from the developer what they want. You're not doing that. There's not just two options. You actually have an entire plethora of options that you just really have blinders on and can't see, but we can. And we want you to vote no on the PUD.
That's right.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Hi there, my name is Jill Eggleton, and I want to bring to task First Marion McQueen. It looks like you opened your comments comparing us to Trumpers. You said that about 30-ish% of the country voted for Trump, and that's about the same number that is opposing the PUD. So I kind of think that's really, I'm not sure where your statistical analysis was in that, but it seems that the true Trumper is Oberer. So I think that that's an elephant in the room. So I think number two, is I've never met Dave Chappelle. I also don't have his number. But however, since you're here, I'm going to speak to, I'm one of those people that I saw Chappelle on TV. Oh my God. And he said, hey, I live at a place called Yellow Springs, and it's actually the Bernie Sanders island in the middle of the Trump Sea. My partner and I looked at each other and said, let's go.
Let's go.
President, and I'm here, and my partner, who was unable to make it, said, if Chappelle is making this a Bernie Sanders island, that sounds pretty cool because of the state of our country. Yes. So I'm here to say, yes, Oberer does own the land, but we can do better, period. There are many options, obviously, everyone keeps saying it. So anyway, I'm here to support the wonderful, diverse cultural, inclusive, loving place that I've only known for a few months, but I know about it because of Dave.
Let's go.
And I also don't know why, I've never met Bob Baldwin either, but apparently he owns a lot of land and a lot of things in the town. So like, what's the deal with that? Why hasn't he been called out? So, vote no.
Counselors, can you hear me?
Yes.
I want
Yes.
to address Mary Ann McQueen first. Your characterization of us as confused, using Trump tactics, or saying your engaged citizens are harassing you as our elected officials is offensive and the opposite of transparency.
Just go.
Second truth I want to tell, there is not a single affordable element in this RA development or the PUD, according to our own standards. Josue himself admitted this during meetings. It is disingenuous and insulting to those of us who actually need affordable housing to call it affordable housing while we're watching you do the opposite. This does not meet our needs in our housing needs assessment. What we need is rental properties and entry-level housing. It says it in the study that you keep referencing, but I don't think you read the whole thing. You mentioned this as being segregated. We don't want this to be segregated. The PUD is segregated by income. You can see it, just look at the map.
Let's go.
Number 3, this does not meet our code or a comprehensive land use plan that you keep referencing. That's in place to protect us from people like Oberer. Please, we are asking you, we are empowering you, we are begging you to use our own document to protect us from predatory development, which they are.
Okay, so here's the deal.
No, I'm still talking.
Okay, but we're not going to have the applause, or we're going to have to cut this off. So speak, let the next person speak, but you can't keep on having.
Number 4, it's better than nothing is not an acceptable standard for our village. This is our lives, it's our businesses, it's our history, it's our future. It's our lives, it's our history, it's our investment, it's our future. It's not as bad as it could be, isn't a good enough standard. Number 5, this doesn't meet our needs, we address that. Number 6, there's good development and there's predatory development. We're not against all development, we're against this development.
2 minutes and I need your name, please.
It's Lindsay Burke.
Lindsay Burke.
Okay.
This is not in keeping with our village culture. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so once again, okay, so I think that got to work out, just like we would not be having an applause if we were in person. We would not have people shouting in the audience. We're going to have decorum in this setting as well. So I'll come back if there's some other speakers, but you know, if we can't have that decorum, then we're going to have to wrap that part up. All right, Don Johnson is next.
Go for it. I'll be out of the room. Have a good one.
Don?
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Dawn Johnson. I'm a 25-year resident at least. I'm a city planner, and I just want to let some folks know that I hear you. I understand you feel like you weren't part of the process. Many of us have been part of the process for the visioning of the comprehensive plan. Many of us were sitting, you know, in the stakeholders meetings when we put together the zoning codes. So I understand what you're saying. You don't feel like you were part of this process for this private residential development. When I say private, it's private property. It's not public property. It's not like the, for instance, the CBE when it got handed off to the village. That was a little different story. That became public land. So we had a different discussion with that. But this is private property. So it goes through a different process. It still gets the process of going through reviews under PUD. However, what I need you to understand, this is important. Please listen to me, ballroom people, because if it goes straight subdivision, you have no say at all. Zero. subdivision review is an administrative process completely. It just goes through the review process. It gets stamped as long as it checks all the boxes, and then you get whatever residents say they want to develop. So understand that at least with the PUD, we get some of what we've asked for in the comprehensive plan. It doesn't give us everything because it's not our plan. It's not our development. We don't own that land. And I know that's really hard for you to get your hands around because we've all played on that land. My boys played capture the flag on that lot for 10 years. And I understand what Max is saying. I mean, he was on the other side of the creek. Thank you, Judy. I appreciate it. But please understand, we get a lot more with PUD. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. Okay, so Judy, are there still people that want to speak in the ballroom?
There are, and I have promised that they will not clap. So yes.
Okay, and also no shouting, cheering. Again, this isn't a watch party. This is a formal council meeting. Okay. Are they able to mic on?
Hi, this is Brittany Baum. I am here today to urge you to vote no on the PUD. I still have a hard time figuring out how this even meets the minimum requirements for the PUD. I think the PUD should be truly exceptional if we're choosing to bend the rules to meet these requirements. And I think this is anything but. We wouldn't all be here if this was exceptional. I think this definitely sets a precedent, and we shouldn't be making decisions based off of the least bad of two choices. We should not be making strategic decisions that will have long-term consequences using this rationale. We developed a comprehensive plan to be used as a guide to help make important decisions like these easier. So we need to be using that.
Jerk off.
We need to update our antiquated zoning codes to reflect our current vision in our comprehensive plan. So sustainability is mentioned time and time again, referring to the ability to support the needs of the present without compromising future generations in the areas of economic, environmental, and human sustainability in the comprehensive plan. I argue that this proposed PUD does not meet any of our strategic goals outlined in the comp plan without mitigating the risk of potential long-term harmful effects. I understand we are in a very challenging time in this community, and there's certainly a housing shortage. And approving the PUD might seem like it's helping some of these problems in the short term, but I would argue that we'd be doing larger damage in the long term. Just like Johnny Dredd, when I moved here 6 years ago, and I could have moved anywhere. I moved 3 times in 3 different states in a matter of a year. What brought me to Yellow Springs was the magic and the culture of this town. I fell in love with this community and I jumped in wholeheartedly. I started Porch Fest. I'm a chamber member. I'm trying to save the chamber. I opened a business in town. I employ people here in town. And what I have to say is if we become more and more like the neighboring communities, what's going to keep me here? I voted for the levy. I don't have kids. I care about this place. What's going to bring other people like me to town if we just become more and more like Fairborn or Beaver Creek? Please do not approve this PUD. We can do so much better together. We just have to work together. And if we all knew about this 2 years ago, I feel like we'd have a much better plan in place. I'm also one that will vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Okay, who's next?
Clark Curlis. One reason why this PUD should be turned down is the significant loss of tax revenue to the village of approving it. Not counting any real property taxes or utility fees related to the affordable units, over the next 10 years alone, the tax loss will be $213,630. That is extremely conservative, and it's based on the $40 million valuation that I saw in Brian Hausch's memo, which I think is way below what the actual value of an all single family development would be. I think the tax loss way outweighs what the village is getting. It is not worth the 1.7 acres. It's a minuscule amount for what's happening on that land. The schools will lose about half the taxes. The village would be better off rejecting this PUD. Single-family residences, by eight out of 10 people under the age of 55 want single-family residences. Those are families for the schools. The mix of housing, do not mistake diversity of housing choices for diversity of people. I think we will get many more diverse people with single families coming in and bringing their kids, and hopefully a very diverse group of them. The development will not mitigate gentrification. The price points are simply too high. At $250,000, which is probably the low end, a 20% down mortgage is a mortgage payment, a down payment of $50,000. I mean, these are not starter homes. So what very little we're getting for like some land for affordable housing, I think what the village should do is take that money, put it in the bank, go buy some infill land somewhere else and do a pocket neighborhood or affordable, but don't lose that tax revenue for forever. And that's what you're doing by doing this PUD. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and all the effort. And I do ask you to reject this PUD. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Laura.
Hello, my name is Justin Herman. I am a lifetime Greene County resident. I left after the first 26 years of living here, in Beaver Creek, I should say, for one crucial shortage, and that was culture. I don't know about environmental stuff. I don't know about, the inner workings of something like this, but I do know that oftentimes it comes down to just hard lines, like, whether it's the law, whether it's, financial, but that's not how all things work. And culture is one of those things. There is no hard line that you can do. Sometimes you can't just be afraid and abide by what that line is. You have to make the right choice for what's right. And I can tell you right now that we are on the precipice in Yellow Springs of having cultural value you cannot imagine. I do not know how many of you have been outside of Yellow Springs in the last few years to see, but I just moved back from Oakland, California, which was once just like what, a beautiful vision of what like this is, but it became gentrified and it became overdeveloped. And now it is not that way. And we're at the precipice right now. I know you can't see it because you haven't been outside, but I'm telling you, while COVID raged, while fires burned, I watched my friends come here from Oakland to be a part of this culture and come back with stars in their eyes. I saw people, I'm lucky enough to have known some of the people that Dave knows. I don't know Dave, but they come back like, oh my God, why did you leave? But the members of the council are on the precipice of throwing away a once in a lifetime cultural moment that could last this town and this village forever.
That's 2 minutes.
That's
2 minutes.
Over a safe play that will turn you into Beaver Creek.
We got to move to the next. Okay, so I heard that there are, thank you. I heard that there are 2 more speakers, and then we're going to wrap up citizen comment. So who is next?
More than 2. 5. We have more than 2 speakers. Hello, my name is Rob Howe. I'm a resident of Yellow Springs. I would like to acknowledge Mr. Oberer and his firm for all their success. So much success that they no longer need to innovate to keep making money. I would like to acknowledge Oberer for having a golden opportunity to develop a neighborhood they can showcase as a model development for other communities, yet they choose not to do so. I would like to acknowledge Oberer for all of its due diligence, be it legal, environmental, geological, traffic, etc., yet are in a position of such fortune and privilege, they can disregard the community input part of this development. Congratulations to you, sir.
Okay. Who is our next commenter?
The next victim, Nancy Kelly, just lived here in town for 2 years, but 35 years.
Get up close. So you
I'll
can
get close, huh? Thanks, and get taller. So, thanks. I just thought, I put a letter in the newspaper this week, which sort of expressed my thoughts was, why not just leave it independent housing and move on from there to what might be real affordable housing? And I just thought I'd bring a picture of what affordable housing looks like. Can you see this?
Here, I'll hold it up.
That's a house that I think could be framed in for, $30,000 about. It is what's referred to, of course, as a tiny house. And if it was produced at 30,000, whether the village created these houses for the rustic and characteristic looks they'd like to have, or whether somebody independently does, the inside could be finished by someone. 30,000 is like buying a car. And if the village has land available, whether it's this PUD, if you do that, or other land, which would be suitable, or if villagers would want to have a tiny home on their property, we could quadruple our population. I'm grateful for Laura putting in facts and figures on what the tax structure is, because I think that's a very big concern. But I would be happy to be part of a team to start putting together the affordable housing program that would bring these units into the village, and with the village creating the legalese to put these in the community, it would probably be in the national news, because there's a desperate need across this country for meeting the problems that we're facing right here in rural Ohio. And I think that we can do ourselves a lot of good by doing it right, and making it available, and making this available for people for their first home, and to start a line of equity, and build to a point where they can.
And that's 2 minutes
if they want. but
Okay, I'm gonna pause here because we've been at citizen comment for over an hour. I also feel like we're getting a little bit off track on the PUD, and we all agree affordability is important. So I just want to check in with other council members to see, because Judy told me there are 7 more speakers now. So Lisa, Carmen, Marianne, give me an idea of what you want to do.
I see that Sarah has her hand up, 3 more speakers.
Okay.
Is that right? Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, that works for me. I mean, honestly, I don't want to stop it. I just want to make sure that council is getting what they need. Okay.
You're on.
Yes.
My name is Sarah Sinclair Amends. I have a master's in public administration and 8 years of experience on a planning and zoning commission outside of the village of Yellow Springs, where I attend multiple regional planning and zoning trainings. We can do a better job. We can do a better job with this PUD. We could do modifications tonight that are backed by our comprehensive plan. We can require an environmental, phase 2 environmental study that actually offers evidence and assures us that we're safe and that the people moving into that development are safe. Instead of trying to offer correlates, there's evidence. We can get it tonight. And we can do a better job with our local government, with the transparency of this process, with listening and implementing suggestions from your constituents who put you in that office. And lastly, we can do a better job supporting our local businesses and our local business owners. We can respect what they've given us. We can trust them with the future that we've put into that comprehensive plan. The community made this comprehensive plan. Our local business owners are trying to give us what we asked for. It's not what Oberer is giving us, and it's not what you're letting happen. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Hey, Catherine Price. I'm a resident of Yellow Springs for 26 years. Am I close enough?
Okay, there's a lot of talking in the background, so we can't hear Kathy.
Catherine Price, a resident of Yellow Springs for 26 years. This PUD, I've spoken a lot about it already, and I know you didn't want repeats, And you didn't want modifications to be brought up because that supposedly wasn't a choice, where the last meeting it was a choice. I believe that things do change a lot. So I'd like to talk about the modifications. It's segregated socioeconomically. I do not like the look of that. And George Oberer, you were quoted in a Business Journal article from last, I don't know if it was last August. I don't have it in front of me, but you said you understood the sensibility of Yellow Springs and we're going to try to emulate that. And the plan that you've developed does not emulate that. I can't understand how you can say that. And in the same article, it was mentioned the Bowen study, which said we needed houses that started at the price point of $150. And I just don't understand how that information was in this interview with you. It's people in the business world actually believe that. I guess it's in print. It's not happening here. The 3-bedroom condos in your brochure were listed at $389, starting at $389, and you didn't put the 2-bedroom condo price, but the 3-bedroom homes that would be Residence A start at $330, according to your brochure. So there's a lot of numbers that are off. And then later in a council meeting, you floated numbers. It's all verbal. So it's like, well, we could do 250 or maybe 150. And, no wonder we're confused. And we need time to have more information. We need to have interaction directly with you, George Oberer, because if you had a relationship with all of us here and had coffee with us, you might feel differently. And we could make some sense out of this. And what I believe is that a referendum would really show the will of the people. I mean, it's terrible to put this on your shoulders, council members, because it's a lot of weighty decision on this plan. And you should have asked for a referendum. Counties do this. They ask from the get-go, oh, we don't want to decide this as council members. Let's have a referendum. And that kind of settles the matter. So it couldn't be avoided. Thank you.
Can I go? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Dave Chappelle. I just want to say, and Marianne, I can talk to you about this privately. I don't know why the village council would be afraid of litigation from a $24 million a year company while they X out a $65 million a year company. I cannot believe you would make me audition for you. You look like clowns. I am not bluffing. I will take it all off the table. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to formally open the public hearing. And I want to do a little bit of fact checking. And then we're going to have Denise, Brianne, a few other people present, and then council's going to make a decision. So Laura Curlis did a commentary on the memo that I put into the packet, and she referred to that earlier. She very factually has stated that the village is going to lose $213,000 in tax revenue. And I want to comment on that because, first of all, and it was really odd to me that was the one modification of my table that Laura made, where she removed the reference to the fact that the valuation did not include the 24 plus affordable units. And then there was a variety of back and forth today, but I do want to highlight that not only is tax revenue not a criteria for making our decision about the PUD, but also no one has a crystal ball about what's going to happen with property values, which, by the way, are a small part of the village's revenue. One of the things that we have to keep in mind is that when we have a diversity of homes, especially affordable homes, that means people who want to live and work here can do so. When we talk about things like going straight single family homes, and someone referred to it as kind of the Stepford development, then I mean, that likely means that we're talking about a lot of people that will not be working in town and will not be supporting all the services directly through their income tax. So I think that for Laura to speak so confidently about the tax revenues, she doesn't know, no one knows. All right, we've got some estimates. Honestly, it's probably going to come out to be the same. I also want to point out, it wasn't raised, but in her memo, Laura points out that she thinks that there's a 4-to-1 against the PUD because of the number of people that have spoken at our meetings or written letters. She knows well, and I know all other council members know, that the folks that come to council meetings, the people that write, are not necessarily representing the majority. And we've said before, it's not about quantity in terms of how many people speak, it's about quality. But I think today we did see a balance of a variety of comments. The last thing is this reference to the idea that we can deny the PUD and then we can change the zoning in the interim and get a better property. I think as a lawyer, hopefully there's an understanding that that is not something that is viable and would certainly open up the village to exposure. So I do not see that as a viable option. I can't imagine that that is something that we would do. So with that, I'd like Denise Swinger to talk a little bit about what the Planning Commission looked at with the factors of what the PUD brings, because there's been a focus on 3 factors. They are not necessarily the 3 factors that the Planning Commission decided on. For those that read the minutes and watched the meeting, what was concluded is that at least 3 factors were met. Denise talks about 5, and Denise, if you'd like to just kind of briefly highlight that, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other legal issues.
Sure. Brian, I don't actually have that document in front of me right now, but the factors, they had to meet at least 3 benefits out of 8, as I recall. One of those was a mix of housing types, which this has. One was connectivity within the development and to other surrounding properties. And let's see, they also had one about the open space. They more than met the open space requirement, which was only 15% of open space. And they were at a little bit less than 23%. I think reiterating actually what Don Johnson said, we have these choices. I feel we have 3 choices. We have the PUD, we have residential A, or we as a community makes an offer to Oberer to buy it from them. If what that price would be, I don't know. But I mean, that's the only other option I see are those 3. And I don't know that the community has approached Oberer. Anybody within the community has approached Oberer to buy it from them. I don't have any information on that. So we as staff only can deal with the code that we have. And we, when we first met with Oberer, what Oberer proposed was following the Miami Township's code for the 30 acres that are in the township. They were going to do large lots, 10,000 square foot or more, and larger homes. And then on the portion that was in the village, they were going to do single family homes, and they were going to follow our 7,500 square foot requirement. And that was going to be it. I mean, they really approached us with single family, a major subdivision. And we as staff said, what about the PUD? Because with the PUD, there's more flexibility. We could get some of the other things that the community values. That is the affordable housing component, however that was going to turn out. We never promoted it as an affordable housing project. We knew it wasn't going to be that. The connectivity, the constructed wetlands for the low impact development, and the variety of housing types. So, I mean, that was what we had through the PUD that we can work with. And that's pretty much it.
All right, thanks, Denise. So I wanted Brianne to respond to, there was some other documents that we got that were a little bit confusing, but I think it relates to this idea of making a decision out of fear. And I can definitely confirm that I'm not there at all. I am focused on our decision criteria, which is around the PUD. And I think one of the things that can often be intimidating is when legal action is threatened, especially for folks that don't have a legal background. It can be intimidating. And we received a memo. It was actually dated February 1st, 2020, but I assume that it wasn't done 2 years ago from, I assumed it was a law firm, but I've been told that maybe it's a group of consultants about, and from California, analyzing our code and throwing around the use of spot zoning, and also talking about this idea of placing the homes away from the core of Yellow Springs. Now, I can accept that a California firm or consultancy would not understand the scale of Yellow Springs. And so, this idea of there being a really strong argument around the placement of homes a couple hundred yards further away from downtown, I don't see how there could really be a strong legal argument there. And so I was kind of surprised that a Dayton lawyer would support that argument as well. But I guess I wanted Brianne to clarify this spot zoning thing, because it seems like a pretty strong accusation to be making in relation to the PUD that we're talking about tonight. So Brianne, if you can just kind of speak to some of the legal actions that have been brought up.
Sure, Brian. So for everyone who's got a law degree or doesn't, and I'm including the California consultant in that, I am sure that California consultant is not familiar with the case of Boutis versus Village of Ottawa Hills, which basically says the property owner has an expectation interest in the current zoning. So this idea that, as Brian said, is floating around out there, that council can deny the PUD and then somehow get the zoning changed from RA without the consent of the property owner, is not going to move forward. The Ohio Supreme Court has ruled and put that to bed in Boutis versus Village of Ottawa Hills. That was back in 2014. Now, as to the issue of spot zoning, our code is very succinct on the issue of spot zoning. It basically says it's singling out a small area or a lot for discriminatory or different treatment from that according surrounding land, which is similar in character. Well, this is not a lot. This is not a small area, but more importantly, this is a residential PUD that's proposed. So it is not being accorded different treatment because a PUD application must be submitted by the property owner. It is not something the village can force on a developer. The developer has negotiated with us on this PUD. Again, Denise just advised the village, in fact, proposed the PUD because Oberer was perfectly fine with proposing an RA development. Per our code, every parcel that was annexed came in RA. That's been the code since 2013. So in terms of what the council and the planning commission had to consider under the PUD code, under 125406, you've got multiple factors to consider, and it says the reviewing body shall consider all these things. That applies equally to council and the planning commission when they're reviewing those. So in terms of this not available or achievable under conventional zoning, that's up to council to decide. In terms of spot zoning, a PUD is not spot zoning. Again, it's not a single lot. It's not a small area. Under our definition of spot zoning, a planned unit development is not it.
Okay. Thank you, Brianne. I also heard that our chair of the planning commission asked us to clarify an accusation about a conflict of interest.
Sure. Early in this process, I identified several planning commission and council members who, based on things they had said, communications, may have a conflict of interest. And some of these were on the appearance of impropriety alone. As most people know, our chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission owns property across Spillan from the development. We sought guidance from the Ohio Ethics Commission, and initially I had advised him, based on appearance of impropriety alone, that he should probably recuse, because back in the 60s, when his property was annexed into the village, for some reason, the half of the road right-of-way frontage was not, at least not on the Greene County maps. So that was an oversight from the way the annexation procedures were done way back when. In terms of his name on the annexation petition, he didn't really have a choice. And then advised that, well, that property is actually encumbered with a deed restriction. So Oberer's development, in reviewing the specific language of that deed restriction, has almost negligible, if any, impact on that property value. Because of that deed restriction language, it cannot be developed. Ergo, I said, Mr. Doden, you've got what appears to be on its face a conflict, but in actuality is none. And other people also had questions. So we submitted it to the Ohio Ethics Commission. The Ethics Commission ruled on 4 individuals, some of whom did not disclose what was being said during the interim, and we got the Ethics Commission opinion back July 23rd. I communicated that to all council members, all planning commission members. And from that point forward, once I give a legal opinion or the Ethics Commission gives an opinion, it's up to the planning commission member or the council member to decide whether or not they do agree with it and should recuse, or whether they're going to carry forward. In this case, Mr. Doden acknowledged that his obligation in a quasi-judicial capacity would have restricted his voting, again, kind of as council is somewhat obligated to based on the language of the code, to considering those criteria in 125406. Other individuals on planning commission advised that they could not, that they preferred to advocate, that they had personal opinions about the project. Therefore, I advised them they should not participate in the proceedings whatsoever. Ohio ethics law is pretty clear. When you have a conflict of interest, the guidance is to recuse completely. However, the Ethics Commission opinion also said, look, you're free to participate as a private citizen when matters impact your personal property. And to date, that is what has happened, to the extent that others have engaged in discussion, deliberation. They've not engaged in voting. They have, for the most part, made very clear that they have recused from their public roles.
Okay, thank you, Brianne. All right, I think before we close the public hearing, my understanding is that either George Oberer or Greg Smith wanted to announce something related to the project.
Am I on now, Brian?
You are, George.
Thank you. And since I know Greg can hear this, and our counsel, Mike McNamee, is on the call also. So I want to make a couple of comments and then allow them to add to those, if that's okay.
Yep.
First, just a little history, and I don't really want to turn this into a debate, but I guess I wanted the audience to know that I actually went along with my brother to see Mr. Chappelle a year ago last September and met with he and Max Crome and showed him our plans. Showed him at the time it was a single family plan. It was an RA plan, but did so more as a good neighbor than anything else. Didn't know what might develop of it. I was acquainted to Mr. Chappelle from a mutual friend, and understood that he had spoke to the previous owner about possibly purchasing part of the property, and I don't want to put words into Mr. Chappelle's mouth, but possibly he didn't want to purchase all of the property, only some of the property, and that made the property less marketable for the previous owner. And I think the previous owner made a good decision, because I would not have been interested in the property had 10 acres, for an example, been sold out of the middle of it. But I was not made an offer to purchase the property at the time. I didn't say I would or wouldn't sell it, but we were never really approached about that. Secondly, I wanted to say that the real estate taxes in an RA zoning or a PUD should be almost neutral. We can achieve the same density on the current and existing RA zoning as we are proposing in the PUD. The property values will vary in those, but not materially. I mean, yeah, you're going to have more affordable houses in the PUD. So the total revenues might be slightly less than they would, in a single family, totally single family development, but they're not going to be materially different. And secondly, third, I wanted to make the point that if real estate taxes and revenues were such an issue between the PUD and the RA zoning, why were they not an issue when we discussed annexation of the 30 plus acres that came from Miami Township into the village? I guess I would just like to remind some of the council members that certainly wasn't an issue when we discussed annexation. Lastly, well, not lastly, but next is the dump is hearsay, and nobody has offered any real evidence to support this, only other than a couple of people claiming to have seen a barrel or two. We've not seen any photographs. We've engaged a third-party and reputable environmental investigative service to conduct a phase 1 environmental study. And I keep hearing references to a phase 2 when there really isn't any such thing as a phase 2. A phase 1 is conducted to see if there's any evidence of any concern over contamination or pollution or any foreign substances that should be investigated further. This report turned up zero evidence that suggested that there should be further investigation. And let me be clear that we provided that to the village on our own. That was not a requirement. That was not, there's no ordinance or regulation that requires that we provide that. But we do that, frankly, for our own protection, because we don't want to purchase land and buy or develop land that has an environmental problem. I mean, I can't run a business and do that. After that, we hired a geotechnical engineer that did a subsurface investigation, did soil borings that were deep soil borings, 20 foot in some cases. And they were 20 foot where they could be. They were stopped short of that where they hit bedrock. But the soil borings were done randomly over the whole 52-acre site. And then the soils were analyzed for both their compatibility for development, but also for contaminants, and none were found. So I guess I want to, and I guess I also want to say, as far as the hazard or soils issues or contamination issues, that's really a risk that I as a developer take on. as we develop this site and if we encounter a contaminant, we're going to have to notify EPA and deal with it in the prescribed manner to decontaminate the site. So I'm saying that I know of no evidence of contamination, but if we found contamination, the village would be better off because it would be our responsibility to clean it up. Lastly, I want to mention that your zoning or comprehensive plans do not require any affordable housing. We typically go into a community that has such a good school system and a desirous community like the village of Yellow Springs. We try to bring products that we already build in other locations. I can't redesign or build or make new designs for every single community that we've developed. It just doesn't make sense for us. So we do try to bring products that are affordable. And affordable is, I suppose, a broad term, but in various different price ranges to make them as affordable as we can, but also as desirable as we can. I mean, we know from our marketing research, we know from building in other communities what sells and what's affordable to some of the population and what's not. In this case, the only reason that there's an affordable piece of this property being proposed is because of negotiations with the village, certain council members, including Brian and Mary Ann and Josue and his entire staff, that communicated with us about some of the needs that the village has. And we tried to meet some of those needs by donating a site, by bringing a park to the community, by and even most recently helping solve, well, from an engineering standpoint, we haven't done it from a construction standpoint, but we'll help the village solve a stormwater issue that exists to the north of the site, our site. So I think lastly, we can't solve all the infrastructure problems that are not connected to our site. We understand that there's perhaps a safety issue on Spillan Road, particularly north of our site. But I did tell Josue this past week, that we would contribute $50,000 towards a community safety fund so that the village could use maybe as grant leverage or matching funds, for an example, to make improvements to a piece of property that doesn't even touch ours right now. We're already improving Spillan on our side of the road, but I'm talking about north of our property. So thank you, Brian, for allowing me to make those comments. And if you don't mind, I'll ask Greg and Mike if they have anything to add to that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Excellent. Hey, I just want to thank George for his comments and thank everybody who spoke this evening. It's been very nice to work in a community. So many people are involved. If there are any questions anybody specifically has, Mike and I are happy to answer them. Otherwise, I think we'll just go from there. But I think I'd like to make ourselves available to especially the council members particularly to answer direct questions.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing, and then I believe, Brianne, you have a next step for us to go through?
Yes, that's correct. So I need every council member that's voting with the understanding that Mr. Stokes is recused to affirm that they have reviewed the record in its entirety. This is an action for a preliminary plan for planned unit development. So Planning Commission has made a recommendation based on its meeting of November 9th. You have the minutes from that meeting. The process is such that the reviewing body, whether it's the Planning Commission or council, has to get criteria to consider under 125406. So I will start with Council President Hausch. Have you reviewed the record in its entirety, including the minutes from the Planning Commission, the prior council meetings, and all citizen comments to date?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Councilmember McQueen, same question. I need you to affirm or attest that you have reviewed the record in its entirety, including the Planning Commission meeting minutes, the application, the prior council meetings, and all the citizen comments to date.
Yes, 3 times in terms of the Planning Commission, November 9th.
Okay. Same question of Councilmember Krieger. Can you affirm or attest that you have reviewed the record in its entirety, including the November 9th Planning Commission meeting minutes and the subsequent council meetings and the citizen comments to date?
Yes, I was present at the meeting and have reviewed. Thank you.
Okay. And Councilmember Lee, same question. Can you affirm or attest that you have reviewed the record in its entirety, including the November 9th Planning Commission meeting minutes, its recommendation, the subsequent council meetings, and all the citizen comments to date?
Yes.
Okay. So everyone has affirmed under 1254.05 C5 as required. You had to review the record of the Planning Commission proceedings, the standards under 1254.06, which we've touched on briefly, and you've got the recommendation of the Planning Commission. So your act would be to approve, deny, or approve with modifications the preliminary development plan and the rezoning request. So I'm not going to get into modifications at this juncture. I will prefer the council president lead that discussion. But my question to you then would be, would you accept, and Brian would call for the vote, but this is for discussion amongst yourselves, would you accept the findings of the Planning Commission in their entirety? Because if you do not, then you have to go back through all of those findings separately.
Okay, so I think at this point, I will make a motion to approve the findings of the Planning Commission. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, if not, then Judy, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, McQueen.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so I believe the next part of this process is to discuss any modifications or any other issues before we take a vote on the PUD. Okay, so.
I would like to discuss modifications.
Okay, Lisa?
Okay, so, you know, I want you to know that I hear the concerns of our community voices. And I've intently considered the many communications with a particular focus on the environmental impacts, the safety traffic impacts, and most recently on a deep understanding of the financial impact on the community. So yes, affordable housing is important, as is overall economic growth to our community. And I ran on both of those platforms. You know, both are important. And I am considering the economic integrity of our village today into the future. I appreciated Mr. Dredd's comments that these decisions will last long beyond my time on council. I appreciate that there's some allocation for affordable housing, townhomes, and duplexes. Yes. And as I've heard tonight, the PUD takes us in this direction. However, what we need in affordable housing is apartments. And we can, as a community, get to those goals, not on this property, and the PUD is not sufficient to really hit those goals. And we've understood why, because of the cost and that sort of thing. So while I accept the findings of Planning Commission, I don't agree that this PUD fulfills 3 elements of the requirements that are important to me, or perhaps I just don't have sufficient information. And these are that it should be consistent with the village vision, that it should integrate a complementary list of land types, and that natural features are preserved. So tonight, I would ask that council table this vote. Table this vote to explore 3 conditions. 1, we do need housing stock, yes. As a condition, we should see an updated site plan that includes options of smaller homes in the design mix. These smaller houses will meet the needs of our housing analysis and add more affordable options. This is all about adding additional levels of better priced housing. 2, go back and look again at the environmental analysis. It might not be what is called a phase 2. And I understand that invoking a phase 2 analysis is like a whole nother level of hell. But there does seem to be additional information that may have been overlooked. And then 3rd, looking internally to the village team, I want to thank the village team for their work to date. And I still want to see a better validated and communicated cost-benefit analysis of the PUD versus no PUD to the village. I agree this isn't a criteria for a PUD. However, looking inside to our team, it never hurts to have more scrutiny and a more comprehensive understanding to ensure that we have the best and most accurate models. Josue has terrific expertise, so does our finance director, Matt Dillon, and we may even have some financial acumen to create a community review. So again, I thank the village team for all their work, and I'm asking for more. I call for a rigorous and publicly visible analysis of the cost and benefit to the village as we go forward. And if tabling isn't an option, then I'm also ready to vote. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Carmen, did you have a comment?
I think that we need to move forward with a vote. At this point, it is important for the village and for Oberer to move forward. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Carmen. Mary Ann, did you have anything you wanted to say at this point?
No.
Okay. I guess I'm just going to reiterate that I don't believe that any level of financial modeling is going to resolve this issue of what we're going to get in terms of property and income tax. And anybody that thinks they have that crystal ball, I just don't believe it. And I've talked to a lot of people about this. Mostly I'm focused on the fact that we have 2 options. And if we decide not to go with the PUD, I think we lose a lot. I don't want to see 143 single family homes only. And I think Denise did a very good job of explaining not just meeting 3 of the factors, but meeting 5 of those factors. Yes, I agree that, there's not really a stream there, but there are other aspects of the forest and whatnot. What didn't come up in the videos and other things was the fact that we have 23.4% open space as opposed to, the minimum 15%. But I do agree. I think that a lot of work's been done, a lot of analysis has been done. And so I also would like to see us take a vote. With that said, Lisa, I don't know if you want to make a motion for a modification or.
Sure. I make a motion for 2 modifications, an updated site plan that includes options of smaller houses in the design mix, and revisiting of the environmental analysis.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, I'm not hearing or seeing a second. So I think the next step then is to take our vote on the PUD. And this will also be an opportunity for each council member to articulate why they're voting. Judy, I'll turn it to you to call the roll.
All right. Brown.
Yep.
And did you want to say anything about why it's a yes vote, Carmen, or?
Oh, yeah, no.
Okay. Okay.
Krieger.
No, for the reasons stated.
Thank you. McQueen.
I'm voting yes, and I'm truly sorry that this has been, well, what I think of as a huge misunderstanding by a lot of in the community about what's possible and what isn't possible. On the other hand, I'm very heartened to know how much passion there is about the community and about housing. And I really look forward to working with all of the people who have this passion on another project that we can actually plan together, that either on the glass farm property that the village owns, or coming together and purchasing a property that can meet some more of the community needs that we have. Having been in the community for 50 years, I've had a chance I know that life doesn't follow in a straight line, and there are all sorts of things that can happen. And while this isn't necessarily what I would design as a project, I actually have a fair amount of hope and can see some positive outcomes.
Okay.
Thank you, Hausch.
So I want to preface my vote by saying that although some may feel that I haven't listened, that is the one reason that I believe I continue to be on council, is that I listen to all voices. I do my best to balance all interest in the community. I think a lot about what is factual, what is opinion, what motivations are, and then try to come up with the best decision possible. I understand that, like many have said, that if I own the property and I had the ability to design it, that I would do differently, like many would. But I also understand that under our existing zoning, we have to make decisions in that regard. And I guess the last thing I want to say with my vote is that I am committed to doing a deep dive on our zoning, and also looking at the opportunities for affordable rentals and everything else with some of the property that there's actually a piece of property that's coming back to the village that is going to be ideal. And so there are a lot of just different things that I'm thinking about, and this discussion has really brought all that together. And I hope that it doesn't have to remain divisive. We've dealt with a lot of things in the past that with the levy and everything that I hope we can get beyond and truly work together to benefit everyone in the village. And so with that, I am going to vote yes for the PUD.
Pardon?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So it's no. I'm opposed to the PUD, and I just wanted to make sure that we were voting on that. So the answer is no on the PUD.
Okay. And did you want to explain your vote, Carmen?
Well, because it's like, as far as my constituents are concerned, with the issue of affordable housing, it's not. And I understand that Oberer is not here in town to provide us with affordable housing. And there are some issues that I have with the comprehensive land use agreement that don't jive with it. And that, the workers in this village, people who want to live here, this is not affordable for them.
Okay. All right. All right. Judy or Brianne, do you need anything else before we move on to the next legislation?
I do not, but I'll just clarify, since it might not be apparent to some folks, if that means that the vote fails.
Okay. All right. So next up, we've got ordinance 2022-03, and Judy, we can read that in by title only.
Oh, there's more legislation? Sorry.
Yeah. See?
Repealing old Chapter 288 Arts and Culture Commission of Title 8 Boards and Commissions of Part 2 Administration Code of the Codified Ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio, and enacting new Chapter 288 Public Arts and Culture Commission.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Okay, I don't think there's much discussion here. We're changing the name to add public for clarity. So does anyone have any questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Open the public hearing. Any questions or comments before we close the public hearing? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing then. And Judy, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Krieger.
Yes, thanks, Council.
Stokes.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we've got the first reading of ordinance 2022-04. And Judy, we can do that by title only as well.
Okay. This is the 2022 first quarter supplemental appropriations and declaring an emergency, Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio. So this is a one read emergency ordinance.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right. So let's go ahead and open the public hearing. And is Matt Dillon talking about this?
Correct, Brian. All right, yeah, so with the supplemental, we have a request for an additional $724,000. $348,000 is related to the general fund. And I'll go ahead and break this down as follows. $238,000 are related to supplemental needs within Lost in Place apartments. $50,000 related to transfers out to capital to satisfy our budgeted needs. And $40,000 related to this is a net neutral shift in the salary allocations to the general fund, mostly in a reduction from the electric fund. And in addition, we have two unforeseen needs related to one is $12,000, $12,500 related to the rev cord system upgrade. This is for the dispatch systems and is a communication system that is vital to the dispatch system. And $7,000 related to a asset valuation for an invoice owed to CBIZ. That is the general fund that makes up $348,000. With the enterprises, we're asking for a supplemental budget of $375,000, $98,000 net need to the electric fund. $150,000 of this need is related to the power cost for our AEP solar farm or solar field that's owed to AEP. $15,000 is related to a new transformer. We have received a reimbursement for that cost, but would need to appropriate that through the expense budget. And this is all netted out with shifts away from the electric fund due to personnel needs in other areas. In addition to the electric fund needs, we also have a $213,000 need related to the water fund. This is for an additional payment for the Ohio Public Works and our Ohio Water Development Association loan. These are really just more of an accounting treatment to catch up to the invoice dates as opposed to the payment dates due. And previously, we've gone on paying them based on the date of the payment. So this is really just a catch up and more of an accounting purposes request as opposed to a new need related to these loans. And in regards to the sewer fund, we have a request for $64,000. This is again related to an additional payment for our OWDA in Ohio Public works collaboration loans for infrastructure, and as well as $30,000 in salary shifts related to where personnel is currently working on and charging those funds appropriately.
I would like to add something, Brian, on the lost in place apartment, you're going to see that high number, and that's due because we closed on the property in this year in 2022. So we're shifting that expenditure over to year 2022. So that's why you're seeing that higher amount under lost in place. What also is included in that amount is the mortgage payment, utility payment, insurance, and all the operating costs that in order for us to spend that money, we have to have it appropriated in the budget. And the revenue streams will come through as part of the payment collections as a separate items on our revenues. So just wanted to provide some clarity on that.
All right. Thank you, Josue. Any questions or comments from council? Okay, if not, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, McQueen.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we've got Resolution 2022-10, and we can read that in by title only.
This is approving the purchase of a sludge press.
All right. Can I get a motion?
I
So
moved.
Second.
All right. Josue, are you talking about this?
This is me. That's the kind of enthusiasm I was hoping for.
Yes.
All right. So sledge press. I want to take you back in time to September 8th of 2020 when we were pulling out of Renergy and we did not know what we were going to do with all of our biosolids. I'm sure there's other ways to describe the biosolids, but we found ourselves in a bit of a pile. So we went on an exploratory process. At the time, we thought it was going to be more costly to move away from energy. And just background, Renergy is that company just outside of town that took our biosolids as a liquid and they did some fancy stuff with it to turn it into energy. And in that process, they've upset a lot of neighbors. Anyway, so we pulled out of Renergy. We weren't sure what all the financial impact would be. So we proposed two options: an on-site sludge press and removal, and then we would deliver it to landfills. Brown County landfill was one of them. We already had an energy contract with them, or we could apply it locally. We had permits that we could apply the biosolids on farmlands. We thought that might be hit or miss with in popularity with our neighbors, but that was an option. The other piece was outsourcing biosolids removal. At the time, we had a mobile press lined up to haul any additional biosolids. We tried that out for some time. It was very expensive. What are their landfill options? I think Carmen's really excited about this biogas generation at Brown County landfill. So we send our biosolid there. They have a landfill which collects the landfill gas that goes into wells, then gas extraction, which gets burned off using gas engines, and it generates electricity and it comes back to us. So that's one of the landfill options we're looking at. And we've continued using that model. So this is a map of the land application approved sites that we had. Those are everything on blue that we could apply our biosolids on. We didn't go that route. We went with the on-site sludge press. This is what tomato plants that grow on our biosolids look like. This is Brad. I was impressed with his skills of playing in this stuff and looking at the tomato plants. But you know, biosolids are that good that they were growing tomato plants. So after all of this, we pursued this avenue. We thought it was going to be more expensive. We're pleasantly surprised that through this extensive process, the on-site sludge press and pressing on site and delivering to Brown County landfill has resulted in solving a problem that we have while also saving us money. How much, you may ask? Looking at the total expense for 2021 of renting the machine, we're at $82,000. Hauling to Renergy would have cost us $80,000. So that price point is just a little bit higher, but we're looking at in the 82,000 includes the rental of the machine. If we buy the machine, which is what you're voting on now, we would buy the machine at $156,000. We won't have that rental expense. That's going to save us $21,507 on an annual basis because we won't have a rental expense. We will own the machine. So this machine would have a return on investment, or will break even or make our money back in 7 to 8 years in savings. So this resolution before you does two things. It helps ensure the continuation of dealing with biosolids in a responsible and economic way. And it also has a return on investment where the money that you put into allowing us to buy this press machine will make back in 7 to 8 years. In the machine, with good care, it can live for another 20 years. Johnny is online. He can talk a bit more detail on how the gears and all that stuff work. It's some really fancy stuff. And we're excited that we found the solution. So I ask for your authorization to buy this machine.
Okay, thanks, Josue. Are there any questions or comments from council members?
Yeah, so what is the life expectancy, Josue?
Johnny, you want to take that?
Are you there?
Yes.
So the life expectancy, Marianne, this was completely rebuilt when we got it. So as long as we do our maintenance and upkeep, the life expectancy is as good as the motors that are on it. So I'm figuring, as long as we do our maintenance, we're 20 to 30 years and we have to do motor maintenance. But this one was completely rebuilt before we took it up on rent, and it had already been in place for 20 years. So it's got brand new motors. We had to replace the conveyor belt on it this year due to a snag in the thing, but we got that taken care of.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? All right. If not, then G, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Stokes.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, or last up, is Resolution 2022-11, and we can also do that by title only.
All right, this is authorizing payment of invoices with then and now certificate for the first quarter of 2022.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Matt Dillon.
Brian, if I may start with that, because, part of this is I'd like to take ownership for when I screw up. And one of these is a screw up I made. We were looking to value all of our infrastructure assets, and we had engaged CBIZ in a work, and somewhere along the line, we missed creating a PO. So that's why you had this then and now. We, in my 2.5 years of being in the organization, we have avoided then and nows. So this is my first one, and I hope that they're not a common occurrence. So I wanted to preface that. And so that's $6,300. But we wanted to take the opportunity and catch up on a couple of things. One is this IRS outstanding bill, and let Matt get to it, and catch up on the loans for the water plant. Matt?
Thank you, Josue. Yes, so for the two loan payments, if you'll look at, I provided the invoices for those. Those have been dated the previous year. They're both dated 2021, and the payment dates were reflecting 2022 payment dates. Previously, we've been paying these invoices and not budgeting enough to complete those payments by year end. So one thing to clean up is we're going to go ahead and add this, what is essentially a third payment into the budget for this year for the OPWC and OWDA payments. And this doesn't relate to an additional payment owed, but more of an accounting treatment on how to catch up to those payments to reflect those in the year that the invoice is dated and not so much the year when the payment is due. So that speaks to the Ohio Water Development Association payments. And as far as the IRS request is concerned, we have received some correspondence from the IRS related to payments or 941 filings, which would be income taxes owed, that had several adjustments to them. And these adjustments were from errors that occurred from 2020 and earlier. So we're just attempting to catch up with the IRS while we learn more about what mistakes were made within those filings. They were relatively minor, but do add up over time. But we'll go ahead and bring that to your attention and communicate with the IRS regarding accurate filings moving forward.
So Matt, you're saying we don't know what those issues were yet? Is that?
What I'm saying is due to the nature of the communication with the IRS at this time during due to the pandemic and various other things, we've engaged in a lot of postal mail correspondence without really engaging and understanding of what happened back in 2020 and prior. What is clear to us is that they have submitted an invoice to us to catch up on these payments. And through due diligence, I will explore the opportunities that our filings were possibly accurate prior to that, and that this judgment against us, I'll explore, and get some facts regarding that. We wanted to bring this then and now to your attention at this time because interest and penalties has been put onto this finding. And
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm clear about all that. I just wanted to clarify that we don't know why these errors occurred. And so it sounds like we don't know that yet, but we're following up and then we may be able to appeal it or something. Is that right?
I hope to be able to articulate the findings a little bit more than I have at this very, very moment. What I only have is the correspondence received that I've provided to council and the general customer service phone number, which hangs up after several attempts. So we're looking to have a more involved conversation with the IRS on that. And again, I think the amounts you'll see are rather minor. It's just about understanding the payment before we issue it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Lisa?
I feel like I should know this, but who does our tax preparation?
We do. Well, the IRS, we work with Rita. Obviously, Rita's the income tax collector on our behalf. But certain payments from the village to the IRS that were issued internally. So that would be just the finance.
So the actual analysis and tax forms and figuring out how much we'd have to pay and everything has been done internally by the finance director? Not by like a tax accountant or something?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? That seemed like a loaded question for me just to agree to.
Well, no, I just don't know who, like, I have a tax accountant, right? But maybe it was the finance director who does that because it's within the scope of what a finance director does.
Somewhat, Lisa. I mean, honestly, like we have a shared relationship with Rita regarding our tax filings. The amount owed to the village, I would validate as my role as the finance director.
Okay. Thanks. I just didn't know.
And if I may add some more to that, Lisa, we file our 941s, which are the federal employee tax reports. We don't file a tax return like a corporation or an individual. It's not that level of tax preparation. What we do file are annual reports to the state through the Hinkle system. And so that's the equivalent of our tax return, if you will, for the municipal corporation. What we file for the federal government are these 941 reports, which are primarily employee wages. And we do that ourselves because we do our own payroll processing. One of the things that we've changed since Matt's been on board is moving to a more automated process with regards to wage payments and reports. So we automated a lot of that versus a more traditional manual process that existed in previous administration. So I hope that that alleviates some of the issues with reconciling the reports. And to Matt's point, this report is looking at a discrepancy in filings before 2020. It could be a human error. It could be a calculation. It could be a number of things. Matt's taken the proactive approach, given the delays in response from the IRS, letter after letter, while still incurring the penalty and interest. Given the amount, $4,000, we have no reason to think that they're wrong unless we know what they say we're wrong. So we're just moving forward and paying for it. And then we'll figure out if a credit is due to us or an employee down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with what Josue said. Thank you very much for helping me articulate that. I do not pay bills, which I do not understand. In this case, what we're attempting to do is bring our account current with them while we seek further information. And as Josue mentioned, the tax filings are somewhat an ongoing reconciliation process where amendments can be made to prior years, which would cause a difference in the amounts owed.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Judy, can you call the roll?
Yes, McQueen.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it's citizen concerns. This is the time on the agenda where we'll take comments about anything that has not been on the agenda. So no comments about the PUD. Do we have any citizen concerns? Okay, I'm assuming that Matthew Kirk's hand being up all this time is not.
He actually did send a text and say he wanted a minute. I don't know if it's PUD related or not.
All right, he took his hand down. So, all right, guessing we don't have any citizen concerns. Okay, so our treasurer report.
You're sure you want to go through this now?
Well, we put it off for long enough, so we're gonna stick through all of this. So.
All right, so this is pretty outdated at this point, I will say, and we actually do now have a new quarterly report from Brad Drager, which things are shifting quite a good deal. So your next report will be a little more exciting. But as of September 30th, 2021, the village had under active investment $10,470,408. That's an increase of $273,610 since the second quarter report. That total investment number is derived from combining the Raymond James account and the West Banco account information. Interest earnings from July through September were Raymond James, $1,226.37, and West Banco, $31,788.16. Last treasurer's report was in September. You do have Brad Drager's quarterly report to the village, which was written in October, and then you will be getting a new one in the next treasurer's report. I've got information on par value and money market funds and that sort of thing. Those have not moved except to shift up in terms of how much more recent they are. I guess the most notable thing there is that the estimated annual coupon cash flow is $8,942. And the annual cash flow is just about that $8,944. The village had zero funds in Star Oak, Ohio in the last quarter, $493,531 in Raymond James, and $9,976,876 in the West Banco account. As of September 30th, the Raymond James CD purchases are earning an average of 1.92% on a 1.13-year commitment, and West Banco rate is fixed at 1.25 with nearly immediate availability. Star Ohio back then, as a comparison, was earning 0.08%. which was the place it was in the September treasurer's report. That's going to change a lot for the next report. Treasury rates are climbing ever so slowly, and we actually have we have a meeting set up with Brad Drager in the next coming weeks to talk about possibly shifting funds, and that is a discussion we haven't had in a very long time. So that's the significance of the rise in interest rates in the last couple of months. That's it.
All right, thanks, Judy. Any questions for Judy?
There are a whole nother 58 pages on there.
There are.
I summarized.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Old business. We were going to talk a little bit about commission updates. Let me start first. Two things that we need to wrap up. I had mentioned the YS Schools liaison, and I don't know if anyone's interested in that. I am willing to be that liaison, but happy for someone else who is interested to do it.
I'd be willing to co-do that with you if you are interested in being alternate.
Sure. And then secondly, I was reminded that we typically have a chamber liaison. I have been that person in the past, but if there is a council member that would like to take on that role, I'm happy to pass the torch, but I'm also fine with continuing that.
You know, I don't mean to sign other people up for work, but it might seem to align nicely with the Development Corporation. Sorry about that, Mr. Stokes.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with your assessment, by the way. So, yeah, Brian, are you considering at least staying alternate?
Sure. Yeah, I guess there is a meeting this Thursday at 8 a.m. and it is via Zoom. So, and yeah, just keep in mind, because we got in a little bit of hot water, but the liaison role is we just give updates. We're not voting or anything like that. So yeah, I see Mark Heiss is on. So Mark, you can go ahead and mic off and if you want to say something. Or mic on, I should say.
Mm-hmm. So
I just want to say I would be more than happy to provide Kevin with the Zoom meeting, and we would welcome any input from the council. We're very excited about this year, as Josue knows, because we've been very active in keeping the village updated on our plans. So it's going to be an exciting year, and we welcome any input from the village.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And I really appreciate your and Brittany's and others' energy behind reviving the chamber. And we definitely want to have a close relationship, just like with the schools. All right. So Kevin, does that mean you would like to be that primary liaison to the chamber?
That is what it means. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. And then
that's not about the confidence, Lisa.
Okay. And then Lisa, was this also your agenda item?
Not really. I mean, I guess what we have to think about, so a little bit, the coordinator of the village mediation program has resigned for a wonderful new opportunity. And so Marianne and I are going to have a conversation on Friday with a esteemed member of the mediation team to have some brainstorming about how that coordinator position, given that mediation is always a confidential and private thing, how we might be able to leverage some of that person power to get the CRB at least up and running.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited about that because it's the right skill set in the long run. I'm not saying that the village mediation program is the CRB. I'm just saying we need some capacity. So if we can find a person with the right skill set who's a very well-trained mediator that's following the Dayton model, which was very successful, where the CRB was coordinated by mediators. What's less clear to me is how, and we don't have to decide this tonight for heaven's sake, but I keep thinking about how is the effort to stand up the CRB going to sit with the other commission that Carmen and Kevin are working on. And I just don't know, because I feel like it sets us up for sunshine law complications if we have this body of people who are very, very interested in these justice system issues that have two council persons. And then if I don't want to be just like floating out there on the side and not really able to join the group. So I don't have an answer, but I have been fretting about it from a structural perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, you know, when it's a publicly announced meeting, that, you know, means that council members can participate. So, yeah, and I think that does remind me, I think the other reason we had this on here was to talk about the mashup between the Justice System Commission and HRC. But I would propose that I think we're all getting to the point where we've probably had quite a bit of council meeting. So why don't we more formally place this on the agenda for next time?
Right. And Brian, let me say that, Carmen and Judy and I have had some conversations about it. We've proposed some initial changes. So it's, you know, it is a live moving process. And with respect to the CRB, I do suppose there would probably be a relationship, but I don't know that the Social Justice Commission would do much more than referring perhaps to the CRB. I don't see yet, and I could be convinced either way, of there being a hard line relationship between the two. So I think that, Lisa, would that situation allay some of your concerns?
Yeah, I just don't want to get into a situation where it's just too difficult to make decisions together. If we're in liaison with VMP, which Marianne and I we'll work it out.
Yeah. In this, I think this certainly. I'm just going to say this. You know, we saw a massive display of a lot of citizen engagement. You know, I'll just say to those that are still listening, here's a place where you can step up and create some more bandwidth and some more capacity for village council. We need folks to serve on these commissions that are forming or morphing. You know, so I think for the next couple of council meetings, we ought to perhaps consider making that clarion call. And again, encourage folks who have apparently a great deal of energy. And I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just saying, here's a good place to use some of that energy.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we have no new business, and I would like manager's report to be either brief or if there are any questions. So Josue, is there anything in particular that you need to highlight?
A lot of good stuff going on. Body cameras, we're almost ready to bring back a presentation. The policy, we're probably two meetings away. Good things happening on the water loss charts. We've included those charts for you. I hope you've appreciated. You see the significant water loss reductions we've had. Police chief search, we've settled on dates, so I'll be working on that this week to schedule those interviews, schedule those forums, and move forward with that process.
Okay.
I'm open to questions.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Josue? All right. Thanks, Josue. Hopefully next meeting we'll have more time to hear about some of that great stuff. All right. Future agenda items. Anything that folks want to make sure is in the mix?
Yes, I want to be able to talk about the active transportation team, whatever we're going to call it. And I'd like to meet with you, Brian, between now and the next meeting so that we could make a proposal.
Okay, sounds great. Anything else?
Judy, and I guess this is a question for Judy and Carmen. Could we at least have something to present in the second meeting in March regarding the Justice System Commission?
Yeah, I'm on board for that.
Okay, Judy?
Absolutely. I mean, I've sort of been holding off on taking a machete to that ordinance and whacking stuff in and pulling stuff out. But I can start doing that, and then you can weigh in, and we'll get something. We'll get a draft going. So yes, is the short answer there.
Okay, so that's like the 21st of March?
I believe so. Haven't looked that far ahead.
That sounds right. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, really quickly, I'm interested in the CRB proposal being put forward with the 2 pillars intact.
Okay.
So the 2 pillars have to do with the protection of confidentiality, and so that relates to my comments before about possibly being able to use a trained mediator to do confidential intake. And then the other one has to do with the scope of power of the CRB to make recommendations about what should happen with officers around who there's been a complaint. And that echoes back to my comments, I think, at the last council meeting, where I said we still really have to have a genuine legal review of the proposal for the Ohio legality that we didn't get from our previous attorney guy, whose name I don't remember right now, and I apologize for that. We still need to get that insight. And until we get that, we are kind of, I'm struggling with the scope of the second pillar.
Right.
Regarding mediation, has anyone reached out to Jay Rothman?
He's part of that group. So,
okay.
And you may recall that at one point, way back in the Stone Ages, there were some members of the mediation team who were very interested in becoming the beginning seeds of the CRB. And that was good because they have the right kind of training and background. So, I mean, while I'm sorry that we've had turnover in that role, I think that it may create a real opportunity to find the right person who could be at least the first coordinator that could do both things.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll jump in for a minute. As Lisa said, given that Luciana has very fortunately for her been named to a rapid response team mediation for Dayton, it just seemed like we have 2 needs that are basically a similar need, and it isn't, neither of the need presumably will take up a lot of time per month. So it seemed like at least we might talk about, is there a way to consolidate that one person? However, the 2 groups move forward. And maybe there would end up being 2 people, but it would be a way to jumpstart the CRB and also continue the mediation program, because probably the mediation gets a few calls every month. It varies, but so we're not looking at a huge time commitment for any one person. And if we put them together, we could probably save some money and give one person a little more opportunity.
So it sounds like we're now like talking about the issue rather than just future agenda items. So let's put it on the agenda. Do we have any other future agenda items?
Just real that I put Alex Scott on. So she is on for the Section 8.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, anything else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.